Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us on the Curbside as we waste a little more time in the garage with Jim Cherry, noted author, illustrator, and columnist for all things automotive, and Tony Barthel, publisher of the Curbside Car Show Calendar. This is podcast episode number 5 for November 16th, 2018. This week we point the headlights at the Ford Thunderbird from 1964 to 66 and a tribute car by Robert Luxon. Let's head to the garage and see what's going on this week on the Curbside.
Well, here we are again, ladies and gentlemen, on the Curbside. We are at week number 5. As usual, my name is Tony Barthel, publisher of the Curbside Car Show Calendar. On the other side of the microphone, the inimitable Jim Cherry.
Yes, I am, Tony. Good to see you today. What's going on up there in NorCal?
It's smoky as all get out, and unfortunately, it's been rather sad. We have lost almost the entire community of Paradise, and a good friend of mine lost his collection of really beautiful cars, including some very nice Model A's. We wish the people of Paradise well and the best in recovery to them.
Well, I would say the same for the people in Malibu. A gentleman there lost 35 cars, including super rare Hudson Italia, which only 25 were made. That was lost. Also, the Norman Timms Special, if you know that car. Extremely beautiful, interesting car built by an engineer in the late 1940s. It was featured on the cover of Motor Trend back then, and it was recently restored a few years ago, a lengthy restoration after it was found out in the desert, and it was just this gorgeous, crazy-looking cab-forward car with a Buick Straight 8 behind the driver. That was also lost, never to be recovered, only one ever made. So it's been rough. Obviously, our thoughts go out to the people involved in this, first of all. But beyond that, for the classic car hobby, it's also been kind of a sad event.
Yeah, that's for sure. In fact, as you know, we do features about people and the cars that they collect, and we have an upcoming feature on a car that was actually involved in the fires in Santa Rosa, California. A gentleman had restored a 56 Chevy, and it was burned, but not so much so that he didn't bring it back and basically get it running again, and he's taking it to car shows as a tribute. Look for that on the pages of Curbside coming up. And this week's topic is the Ford Thunderbird of 1964 to 66. And I have an interesting story about those as we get into this.
Finally getting that yard work done?
No, I've tied all these balloons to a lawn chair, and I'm going to float around and tell everybody to put their car show and vintage trailer shows on the Curbside Car Show Calendar.
You don't have to go anywhere. They can do it right from any smartphone or computer. Besides, are you trying to win a Darwin Award?
Up, and whoa, no, I dropped the BB gun.
I'll go get the rifle. Hope I don't miss.
Hey, the neighbors are skinny dipping.
My husband is insane. But Curbside.tv is a great place to get the word out about your car shows and vintage trailer events and read great stories about vintage cars.
Well, Tony, this week's blog post that I've written is about the history of these cars. And it was an interesting evolution for the Thunderbird because they had traditionally been refreshing the car ground up, all new, every 3 years. The first car, of course, was the two-seater we're all familiar with. Then came the Square Bird of 1958 to 60. And then 61 to 63, you had what people call the Bullet Bird, the very pointed, rounded-looking car. For 64, they changed it up, and the car was very crisply squared off. It's really a sophisticated, very light-looking design, but it evolved perfectly from the very rounded off Bullet Bird. The 64 to 66 is often called the Flare Bird or the Jet Bird. There's no real established name for it, but it was all new with an all new body and all new interiors. It also addressed the luggage capacity question, which seemed to be a lingering problem with Thunderbirds.
That is probably my favorite generation of Thunderbirds, but it's subjective, like ice cream. There's no wrong answer except running out.
Yeah, it was an elegant looking car. It still is. It's just gorgeous. And it was offered in different models. For the first time, you had a lot of choices in the car. It came in the traditional two-door hardtop, also convertible, which we always had. Also, there were a few two-seater sports roadsters made from this series. And then there was the formal Landau models where they kind of blanked out the last window on the side of the car. So you had a very thick C-pillar for a very elegant, private-looking luxury car.
Yeah, in some ways, that Landau model almost was a foreshadowing of the 19 1969 to 82 Chevy Camaro and Pontiac Firebird, and the way that window looked, at least.
Well, it had that kind of reverse slant on the pillar in there. And it was a lot thicker, though. It was almost, talk about a blind spot. I don't know what it was like driving those cars, but that was a big wedge of pillar back there. They looked kind of cool, though. So they were very popular with the buyers as well. They loved that Landau model. And so...
what other features were unique to this model, Jim?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Tony, because I'm ready. They did feature sequentially blinking tail lamp turn signals on the 65, but the 64 was intended to have the feature, but they had to get the states to legally pass on the idea of sequential blinking taillights. So that was delayed a year, but it came out for 65. And the 65 model, same looking car, but it also had disc brakes for the first time. The other features of the car were swing-away steering wheels, coved rear seating. I don't know if you've ever seen the rear seats in these, but they kind of wrap around to the sides of the car. Very cool look. What they called a cockpit-style console, that everything was canted towards the driver, retractable seat belts, and flow-through silent air ventilation. You no longer can hear the air. And that's
important.
It is. It was actually a really kind of a cool thing, because what they did was they put an outlet for the interior air beneath the rear window. You'll see there's a vent slats back there. So when you opened up the vents on the dashboard, the air would actually flow through the car and go out below the back window. So it was kind of a cool feature.
That's impressive, because it used to be people would drive around with the windows open, and that's the generation where you started to see more and more cars where the drivers would have the windows closed, except maybe the vent window, because back in the 60s, everybody was smoking in their cars.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. That ventilation system was probably favored by smokers, I would think.
Yeah.
At any rate, this was the best-selling Thunderbird ever up to that point. They sold 90,000 cars for 1964, so it was a blockbuster in the sales race. Unfortunately, in 65, you had some competition. The Riviera had come out in 63, and then in 64 and a half, you had the Mustang come out. They may be part of the reason, but the sales dropped 20,000 to the 70,000 unit range for 65.
Well, and that was also, I think, the same year the Tornado came out as well.
I believe that was 66 for the Tornado.
66? Okay. Yeah. Because they kind of had the market to themselves. There really wasn't a unique personal luxury car, as they later came to be known.
Well, you had the Riviera in 63. The 63 Riviera was direct competition targeted straight at the Thunderbird.
Right there. Yeah, you're right. The Riviera came nothing from anyone else.
Chrysler finally ponied up with the Cordoba, which came much later, but it did feature Corinthian leather. I don't think we want to forget that.
Oh my God, right? Actually, a friend of mine had that, and the coolest feature that car had, in my opinion, as a young lad at the time, there was a button on the floor, and it would advance the radio to the next preset.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's luxury.
Well, that's what you get with your rich Corinthian leather.
Yes, I'm sure. Just to continue with the features on the Flarebirds, everybody's familiar with the 62 and 63 Thunderbirds with the sports roadster cap on the back seat that converted it into a fake two-seater. Very cool look on the Thunderbird. They kind of got out of that for the next generation with these Flarebirds, but they did make 50 of them with the headrests set up, that tonneau cover over the rear seats. Those are the most sought-after examples. Extremely rare car.
Yeah, those are neat because it's basically, it looks like a gigantic trunk lid.
Yeah, they make them really into cruiser mobiles. They're very beautiful, but they're extremely rare on the Flarebird. You see a lot of them in the previous generation, of course. They made a lot more of them.
So what kind of power could you find under that long hood of that Thunderbird, Jim?
Well, as we all know, Thunderbirds always came back then with a V8, and this one was no exception. It had a 390 cubic inch, 300 horsepower V8 that took 11 seconds to power that thing to 60 miles per hour. It's a pretty heavy car for its size. Now, later in 66, they increased the V8's power to 315 horsepower and offered a 428 cubic inch or 7-liter V8 with 345 gross horsepower. And that got your 0 to 60 down to 9 seconds.
Wow. Now, for people who are not into the cubic inches or liters, let's say you go out to your Honda dealer and buy, a Civic, for example. You get a 1.8 liter 4-cylinder engine, and this thing had a 7-liter 8-cylinder engine. So fuel economy, who cares? It's the 60s, baby.
Hey, what was gas back then? 35 cents a
something like that.
gallon? I mean, that was, who cared?
Right.
Anyway, they did also offer a rare special order factory installed 427 for 63 to 65. There are only 120 of those high performance T-Birds are rumored to have been manufactured, and only 6 are supposed to be existing now. So that you'll probably never see one of those things.
One of the neat things about these special interest cars like the Thunderbird, there are a lot of great clubs devoted to these cars. So there's Thunderbird specific car clubs. There's an international car club specifically for Thunderbirds, and then of course US based car clubs. So if you're looking for resources or materials or information, that's another good place to turn to, is that. And then a lot of times I've had friends who are looking for specific types of cars like Thunderbirds, and they go directly to the club and look for whatever they want to buy. So that's kind of a cool thing, that if you're interested in Thunderbirds, there's an active Thunderbird community out there.
Yeah, good point, Tony. And even Jay Leno recommends, if you're looking to buy any kind of collector car, first thing to do is join the club for that car, start getting some contacts in there, and start asking those people what's available. If you're looking to buy a car, they'll know what's available. They'll know who's a good guy to deal with. They'll probably know the history of the cars that are for sale. These guys talk a lot amongst themselves. So highly recommended for anybody looking to get into the collector car hobby. Join the club and start there with whatever make you're interested in.
Yeah, and I think we're going to start adding links to the clubs at the bottom of the articles for what we do on Curbside. So we'll have a little bit more resources and information for you with each of our articles. Always trying to kind of polish the paint job on Curbside, make it a little shinier.
We're adding features, we're adding options. We'll have heated seats within a year.
But will we have a tilt-away steering wheel? That is the question.
You got to drive a Thunderbird for that, my friend.
Yeah, that's a cool feature. So I have a good Thunderbird story. Back in the old days, when I was in high school, we used to have a rally, but there's a bunch of trivia questions, and you would answer the questions and then make it to the next spot. And I entered a friend and I were in a friend's 64 Thunderbird, and that car was just a blast. Everyone else had contemporary cars of the time, but this thing was even a classic then. And we made it about halfway through the race before it broke down and we had to have it towed.
You got to pay the cost to be the boss.
That's right. We looked good.
Yeah,
but
briefly.
We didn't run good.
These cars did look good, and their good looks landed them a lot of roles in Hollywood productions. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the Thelma and Louise Thunderbird convertible that flew off that cliff. That was a 1966 or so, I think. But also in the Highlander TV series, they featured a black 64 Landau model. Also in The Outsiders, a 66 convertible in red was featured. And in David Lynch's Wild at Heart, there was a 65 Thunderbird convertible in black. So these cars have proven popular with the Hollywood stylists.
I can't blame them. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I know there are going to be some Ford people who absolutely are infuriated by this statement, but I believe that the Thunderbird is one of the best looking cars Ford put out in the 60s, realizing that styling is very subjective, but I sure like the look of these things.
Yeah, I'm always going back and forth between the Jetbirds and the Flarebirds. I like them both so much. They're both really beautifully designed to my eyes, and I think they hold up and they still look great. They don't look like funky old cars to me. They just look like beautiful cars.
Yeah, they're so clean. Going back to your podcast on the 1959s, how they were so gaudy and the following cars were just so clean. This is an absolute prime example of that.
Not to mention the fact, Tony, that the interiors on these Thunderbirds was off the hook. They were so beautiful and super stylized in the luxury manner. The swooping consoles and all the tilt-away wheels and the coved rear seats. They were very swanky interiors. It was a car suited to the Rat Pack, and that that type of cocktail culture or Mad Men culture of the 1960s.
Well, that and one of my favorite things are the sort of bubble-looking gauges. They're so cool.
Yes, for this series, they had those little round spheres in the dashboard, and each one was a different gauge behind glass. It was really crazy looking.
Yeah, we'll have a picture of that on Curbside. It's an interesting instrument panel.
Well, I was just going to give some production totals. As I mentioned, they sold over 90,000 for 64. That dropped to 74, just about 75,000 for 65, and it dropped down to just 69,000 for 66. Still a respectable total. So that means a total of 236,000 of these cars were built. So there should be a few survivors out there. In fact, there is a number of survivors around.
How's the market for them today? Is it still pretty strong?
That's a good question. I can't pretend to really have any direct knowledge of that, but I know these cars have always been sleepers in the collector car market there. In my mind, they're very undervalued as to how cool they are and what their prices go for. So I think they would be a good investment if somebody was going to hang on to them for a while.
Sounds like a good idea. Well, we'll be right back in just a moment. We have some more cool stuff for you this week on the Curbside.
Oh no, what are you doing with a horse?
This plan can't fail. I'm going to ride around like Paul Revere so I can tell everybody that they can post their car show and vintage trailer rallies on the Curbside Car Show calendar.
You don't have to go anywhere. They can do it right from any smartphone or computer. Besides, who's going to clean up after the horse?
Oh, right. Though I do love horsepower.
It's not the same kind of horsepower. My husband is insane. But Curbside.tv is a great place to get the word out about your car shows and vintage trailer events and read great stories about vintage cars.
Oh no, I stepped in it.
All right, well, we're back, and I just wanted to draw your attention. Monday was Veterans Day here in the United States, and it's a day that we pay tribute to the people who have served this country, many of which have paid the ultimate price. So we do salute all of our veterans here in this country. And I was fortunate enough to get a gentleman who wrote to me, Robert Luxon, and he has taken a 1986 Chevy El Camino and made it into a rolling display that's very heavy on patriotic imagery. In fact, in the bed of this car, he's got all 45 presidents painted. He's got Mount Rushmore. He's got the Capitol Dome. Every inch of this car is a tribute to various aspects of pop culture, military actions by the U.S., movies, you name it. It's just an incredible car to see. So if you have a few minutes, you might go over to Curbside and look up Bob Luxon's 1986 El Camino. There's, I think, something like 50 pictures there. It's an incredible car.
I noticed, Tony, that you have a photo of him airbrushing on the car on your blog post about this. And it's really interesting. He's there with his airbrush and doing it himself. All his own artwork.
Yeah, he was a art teacher. He's got a master's. There's hundreds of illustrations on this car, and each one not only has some pretty intricate detail to it, but also descriptions. So you know that's the Millennium Falcon, or that's Mickey Mouse, or whatever. I mean, his tribute to 9/11 has, of course, the Twin Towers, but also Lady Liberty holding her eyes. And it's an incredible car. And one of the funny things, he's taken it to concours events. And at those concours events, he gets better attention than some of the concours grade cars. So sometimes the other participants aren't thrilled, but it's a super car. And then he has a tip jar there, and he donates all the money that he brings in from this car's being on display to various organizations. So it's a good cause. It's a great car, and he's a cool guy. I really enjoyed talking to him. So he wrote us on Curbside and said, hey, I've got this car. Do you have any interest in doing a story about it? Oh, absolutely. So if you have an interesting car, or if you have a great car story, who knows, you could be featured on Curbside, and you can write to us. There's a contact us tab up there. So write in. We'd love to hear your car story. That's what it's all about.
That's right, Tony. And I think this car in particular would be great for school kids to view, because it's a way to teach history in a way that I think would be a lot of fun for the kids and get them excited about some of America's great past events and presidential personalities and things. He's got all the presidents in the bed of the car there. It'd be a great way to get students excited about American history, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And also pop culture. I mean, he's got, like I say, there's all kinds of pop culture items on it and movies and such. There's one of the pictures that's blown up there is the picture of the hood of the car. And on the hood, he's got probably 30, 40 photographs. And he's using all those photographs just for one little sort of vignette on the hood. And there's a number of vignettes on the hood. So the research that he put into this thing is incredible. It took him 3 years of painting. And unfortunately, there's so much detail and such. Bob is a member of our senior citizen community. It's actually affected his vision. And so he's had to have a corneal transplant because of the detail and such that he's put into this car. And he's recovering, so we wish him good health and great painting. This car is incredible.
I would hope that car goes to a museum one day because it's too interesting and so elaborate and so interesting that he did all the work himself. It definitely deserves a permanent display somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's astounding. And he's in New Jersey, so if you're on the right coast of this country and you happen to be at a car show, take a look and see if you spot that El Camino. I almost guarantee there's going to be a crowd around it.
Sounds like it would be. And thanks, Tony, for another great podcast. At least we think so. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. We do one of these every week, and we welcome your input. You can write to us via the contact on curbside.tv and let us know what you think. If you want to suggest any topics, we're always open to that as well.
While it may sound like two miscreants in the basement of their mom's garage, it actually takes a village to put this on. And we've got those village people. Head of transportation is Rolo Coaster. Healthcare provided by Dewey Hurt. Original content by nobody. Nobody at all. Thank you for joining us this week, and now go get something productive done. That honey-do list isn't getting any shorter.